Welcome to the Recovery Room podcast. I'm your host, oncology physical therapist, Dr. Leslie Walke. In this episode 18, I'm going to treat you to a conversation I had with a dear friend of mine from 2.5 years ago. Linda Hansen, in the medical world, is known as an exceptional responder. Stay tuned to find out what the heck that means and why it is so important. Linda and I have been friends for more than 10 years and can laugh our way through pretty much any conversation, even those talking about metastatic cancer. Linda has been active with the National Breast Cancer Coalition, ABCD after breast cancer diagnosis, and is also active with Medivivor. Now in her late 60s, Linda has been living with metastatic breast cancer for, you know what? I'm going to let her tell you the amazing answer. And actually, because this conversation is a few years old, you get to add 2.5 years to the number she tells you. And she is still going strong. And the number of IV doses of chemotherapy she has had is up to 305. Absolutely amazing. In this candid conversation, we will talk about living with de novo stage 4 breast cancer. We'll talk about stats, guilt. We're going to talk about good days. We're going to talk about bad days. We're going to talk about long-term strategies for icky side effects. We're going to talk about talking with your children and living with cancer on your forever horizon. Whether you have stage 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 cancer, I think you will find this conversation a story, and a story of hope and truth. This is the Recovery Room podcast discussing all things cancer and cancer recovery. Please hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons because the more you help me grow this podcast, the more cancer patients and survivors we can help. If you are tuning in, it's most likely because you have been touched by cancer, are a cancer patient, or a cancer survivor. I hate that cancer has brought us together, but I am really glad that you are here. My goal is to make the world better for people with cancer by bringing you the experts, accuracy, understanding, and next steps you need to be healthier, more confident, make better decisions, and to live your best life after cancer. I would love you to share your thoughts and stories either in the comment section or to leave your story or message on our voicemail at 414-373-0700. Again, all that will be in the show notes. Thanks again for being here. Enjoy the conversation.
Well, hopefully we can edit this if I do something really stupid.
We're not going to do anything stupid.
Oh, you don't know me that well.
So, Linda, welcome. Happy to talk with you.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
All right. So, I am not going to make people wait any longer because I teased in the intro how long you have been living with metastatic breast cancer. So, right, I got to drum roll you. Ready?
Okay.
Linda Hansen, how long have you been living with metastatic breast cancer?
11.5 years.
Holy smokes.
In fact, it was 11.5 years just a couple days ago. So yeah,
wow.
I'm over the half now.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you were diagnosed in 2010.
Right.
At the age of 54, and now you're 65.
Yep.
Okay, spectacular. And another drum roll. How many doses over these 11.5 years, how many doses of IV chemotherapy have you had?
263.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been in oncology a really freaking long time. That's got to be a record, I think. Because the stat is the 10-year survival rate for de novo metastatic breast cancer is 13%. So you have just crushed that stat.
I'm still going.
Yes, that's pretty sweet. So for the people that don't know, you were diagnosed with de novo metastatic breast cancer.
Right.
And what that means is that at the time of your original diagnosis, you already had stage 4 breast cancer.
Right. Mets to the liver. Yes.
Yeah. So not bad enough to get breast cancer, but might as well just God.
Yeah.
So I love how you and I were talking once, and you were talking about the guilt thing. So can you just tell us about that no guilt little speech that you have?
Sure. I mean, I know a lot of people with breast cancer who feel guilty that they didn't catch it soon enough, or there was something and they didn't see the doctor right away, or they were late on their mammogram, or gosh, they were eating sweets or whatever. I mean, all sorts of theories out there. And I'm here to say it doesn't matter what you do. I did everything I was supposed to do. I'm a real rules follower. You tell me what the rules are, that's how I behave most of the time, not always.
Yeah, and that's why you're an attorney.
Yeah. So I was just convinced I couldn't have breast cancer. And before my diagnosis, a friend had talked me into doing some triathlons the summer before. Mm-hmm. She said, we got to do these before we die, and it's getting late to do it, so let's go. And our only goal was to finish it upright under our own power. There was no plan to win, no plan to set a record, no plan to do anything. And actually, we referred to that last part of the triathlon as the walk.
Right.
To give you an idea of, what a great triathlete I am. And so I was eating right. I was getting enough sleep. I wasn't drinking. I was working out, doing everything they tell you to do. And I got diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer.
Yeah. And you had just had a negative mammogram.
I had a clean mammogram.
Like a month before your diagnosis, right?
5 weeks earlier.
Wow. And it actually was your running, because you said you were out for a jog and you felt pain in your breast?
Yeah. It was the very first and last time I ever got up early for work to go running before work. I hate running. And I don't know why I did it that day, but I did. And I noticed that every time I hit down with my right foot, I felt sort of a twinge. It wasn't like horribly bad. It was just sort of a twinge in my right breast. And I thought, well, that's a little weird. I wonder what that could be. But I knew it couldn't be breast cancer. I just had a clear mammogram.
Right. So initially, when, especially back in 2010, when I first started in oncology back in the 90s, well, very rarely did anybody live past a year and a half once you were diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, whether it was de novo or not. So in 2010, how did your physicians, especially with liver mets, my God, how did your physicians prepare you for what that meant? And then my next question will be, how do you incorporate that into your psyche now that you're here 11 and a half years later?
Initially, I didn't ask too many questions. I wasn't sure how much I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And so when friends would ask me what they could do for me, I said, go on the internet, look this up, and find out what's the latest and greatest treatment and who the best doctors in the country are. Because if I want a second opinion, I want to know where to go, and I want to be able to discuss treatment plans with my doctor. But right now, I'm not up for the how long do I have to live kind of thing.
Right.
I was so careful. And then one day I was reading a book review by this woman with breast cancer. And all I did was read the book review. It starts out by saying, it doesn't matter how much science changes. People with metastatic breast cancer still only live about 2 years after diagnosis. So, well, thank you for that. So
I put it in your face, huh?
Yeah. So once I found out about that, then I started asking my doctor more. And one of the first things I asked him was, I've been socking this money away for retirement for a long time. And it's time for me to do my annual contribution to my retirement account at work.
Yeah.
Should I keep doing that? And he said,
question. I mean, seriously.
Yeah. I wouldn't take it all in a lump sum down to a casino and put it on a hand of blackjack.
Well, not with your luck at that point.
No. Well, buy lottery tickets, a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And so I knew it wasn't good. But, I had the opposite reaction of a lot of people I know. A lot of people shift right into I'm going to eat right. I'm going to get more exercise. I'm not going to drink. I'm going to do everything right. And maybe it'll get me to live longer. My attitude was, I was doing everything right and I got this disease.
Yes.
I am not spending the next 2 years of my life, if that's all I have left, in a gym eating right and not drinking. So I stopped eating right. I stopped exercising and I started drinking. And here I am 11 and a half years later, and I'm still alive.
Yeah, there you go. I know you always, because I'm obviously harping on you to exercise all the time. You're like, well, it's working for me.
Yes, my oncologist says, why would you change what's working?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was hard to think I didn't have long to live.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter was
you've got girls. How old were your kids?
17, 22, and 25.
They're way too young to lose their mom.
Yeah, they were. And the oldest was engaged. And they were planning a wedding 2 years from then. Yeah. And so my goal became to live long enough for the wedding.
Yeah.
And my youngest just got married last September. So I've gotten to go to 2 weddings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How do you deal with, and maybe you've lived with it long enough now that people in your world know, but did you ever get any kind of weird feedback or kickback from, well, you have your hair, well, you look normal, you look fine, you're obviously not sick?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Tell me about that.
What it does is it really makes me mad at those people who pretend to have cancer. It doesn't happen, but every once in a while on the news, you hear this, that someone just bilked all these people. It's horrible.
Yeah, there was a woman in Australia recently that was arrested, and she had, a following of hundreds of thousands of people online. She had brain cancer. I'm like, no, she never did. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
But those of us who look healthy are then subject to that kind of.
Right.
Are you sure?
How bad can it be?
And I know there's a woman on a couple of the Facebook groups that I'm part of who actually had someone accuse her of not really having breast cancer. And it was horrible. She's really young. She's got this beautiful little girl. She's really having a hard time of it. And to go through all that and then get accused of not being sick. But I do get people going, you don't look like you have cancer. Right. You still don't look like you have stage 4 cancer.
Right.
But the reality is, unless it's early in the process and you're just going through adriamycin and Cytoxan, your hair is probably growing back.
Right.
And it might be short, but that doesn't necessarily scream cancer as much as a bald head screams cancer.
Right. I think that's a good point you make, because many of the early treatments for people who are newly diagnosed with stage 4 disease aren't as cytotoxic or as caustic as some of the early on drugs that really make you sick. So if somebody's been through early stage, chemotherapy, it's probably going to be that, like you said, the Cytoxan, Taxol, adriamycin, those are really icky, powerful drugs that do make you look sick. Where some of the drugs, especially early on in metastatic breast cancer, they treat you with things that don't make you lose your hair. You may feel crappy for other reasons, but you may not look as sick as you originally did. So I think that's confusing to a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm on Perjeta and Herceptin now. But Taxol caused neuropathy in my hands and feet.
Yeah.
I drop stuff all the times. I grip on stuff. But
what I've been on aromatase inhibitors forever as well.
Oh, yeah. That's been 11 and a half years.
And I know, the joys of getting older now. You've hit, dealing with arthritis and as a person in their 60s. And then on top of that, to have the aromatase inhibitor pain, I know that you're starting to struggle with.
Yeah, that was actually tougher early on. It doesn't give me the joint pain now that it used to.
Good.
I was in court once, federal court, judge, high level case. And when you stand up, when you speak to the judge, you're supposed to stand up. And I went like this in the pain, and and she was asking me a question, and I just answered it, and I didn't really stand up, and someone chewed me out for it later. And I was like, I'm sorry, I couldn't. I just couldn't. But now with Herceptin and Perjeta, the only real side effect is I spend inordinate amounts of time in the bathroom.
Okay.
But unless you spend all day with me, you don't know that.
Yeah.
I can plan for things by not eating before them and stuff. That's not a good long-term strategy because you have to eat at some point.
Sure.
But, I can work around it if I absolutely have to, but I can't do it every day. I still have bad days, although they just put me on a new drug, Cholesterol, and that is really helping a lot. It's an obnoxious drug to take because you have to take it no sooner than 1 hour after any other drugs, but at least 4 hours before any other drugs. So depending on how often you're taking drugs and at what schedule, it it does mean you spend more time than you have to looking at the clock to figure it out.
Yeah, I literally living with metastatic cancer can be as busy as a full-time job. I mean, I'm like, some of these people need secretaries. They literally are so busy and have so much to schedule. It's like, how do you keep that all straight? And then all the bills and the appointments and the follow-up scans and the pharmacy visits. And it's just a lot. And I think, again, back to the you look great. It's like, I'm glad you don't look like crap, but it's like.
But most days I don't see anyone there who looks sick.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll be there when someone comes in a wheelchair or someone comes in with an oxygen tank and they look pretty drained. But those tend to be the people who are either with the first knockout round of the let's see how bad we can make this stuff feel for you to get rid of this cancer, or they're near the end. The rest of us who are in between those two, we look pretty much like everyone else walking down the street.
So I know too that, again, a long life for you has been a gift, but again, there's the horrors of aging, and I know that you've lived long enough to lose a child, and I think that's a freaking nightmare.
Yeah,
my heart goes out to you for that. Yeah. But you have 2 daughters still alive, correct?
Yeah.
And then, so how does that impact your relationship now, knowing that, yeah, you're here and you look great and you've been here forever and you're probably going to be here forever. But I've talked to adult children whose parents lived for a really long time, and it really messed with their head. So how do your mom's dying, but she's not dying, and life happens, and I should be nice all the time, but how is your relationship affected by the fact that you're living with this?
I think they're kind of like I am, which is, so far it's working, and we don't talk about it a lot. I mean, every now and then it'll come up, and I just keep telling them I'm doing great. In fact, my first oncologist retired. So, yeah, I live longer than.
Yeah, that's long enough. Incredible.
Yeah, and I started with a new oncologist, and I'd only seen him twice. The first time I saw him, he acknowledged to me that he had just gotten my records. He had not really had time to study them. The next time I saw him, which was a couple of months later, he'd had a chance to look at my records. And what he said to me was, I'm pretty much amazed. He said, in my entire career, you are only the second breast cancer patient that I have treated who has done this well. He goes, you have now fallen into the category that we call exceptional responders. From the time I went through adriamycin and Cytoxan, Taxol, and I started Herceptin, which of course I'm still on. Then I had surgery and then radiation. After that, I went in for scans to see what was left, and there was nothing left.
Yeah.
They couldn't find it. I had a PET scan, nothing glowed.
And they were looking in your liver, right?
Yeah. Well, they were looking at everything in the PET scan. There was nothing there. And they said, this is great that you've gotten to no evidence of disease after the first round. But then the next time I had to have scans, I just, it was horrible. In the cancer world, we kind of refer to it as scanxiety.
Yep.
And it's from the time you go in for that scan until the time you get the results. And all you can think about is worst possible outcome. Right. It's really tough. But it's not that bad for me anymore. I've gone through about 10 years of no evidence of disease scans.
Yeah.
And I still get scanxiety. Don't get me wrong. It's still a little stressful, but not that stressful anymore. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm not too worried about the future anymore.
Yeah.
I'm more worried about, did I save enough for retirement? Which is a good worry to have, let me tell you.
You got to go pick that retired medical oncologist that told you, you don't need to save for your retirement anymore. Tell me it was about $100,000.
But he was right, statistically.
Yeah, well, that's right. Nobody expects this.
No, and the doctors have been real clear with me that if I had been diagnosed 10 years earlier, say 20 years ago, they would have just told me to get my affairs in order because I'm triple positive. Yeah. And back then, Herceptin wasn't a thing.
Right.
that there wouldn't have been any chance of stopping it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't take it for granted. I love living every day. I love spending time with friends and family, going on trips and, kind of kicking things off the bucket list.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot on my bucket list. I've always been pretty happy with what I've done so far. It's been great. And I think I told my kids what the oncologist said, and they both kind of went, oh, that's good to hear. But, I still, every time I get a clear scan, the first thing I do before I leave the oncologist's office is text my kids and go, another clear scan.
Yeah.
Because that's first. As soon as I know, I want them to know.
Yeah.
They're the most important people in my life.
Yeah. And I think another thing that's really significantly different now than even 10, 15 years ago is, again, when I first started in oncology in the 90s, there was Plan A, which they gave you when you were diagnosed with stage 0 through 3 cancer. And then if you got metastatic cancer, it was like, oh, well, here's kind of a B.
Yeah,
when B ran out, you were done. But now there's the entire alphabet of treatment options, and they're coming. And again, anybody who's listening to that has metastatic disease knows that it's like, oh, don't worry about it. You're going to just try something else, because it is a brutal way to live. But in the constant scans and the constant anxiety and the constant side effects, it's a brutal way to live life. But there are new things available, and there's new things coming out, and we're learning at a really rapid pace now that is different than it was years ago. I think that it takes about 10 and a half years for a drug to go from a phase 1 clinical trial to full regulatory approval. 10 and a half years. Yeah. So what happened then is now fruitful. And so we know there's more coming. And again, I think even only 10% of drugs that start in those clinical trials, actually only 10% of them make it to the clinic because they're effective. So we can see that stuff is coming, which again makes it a different story for people who live with, who do get the opportunity to live a long time with metastatic disease.
Yeah, it's not fun. I read an article recently that someone wrote that said getting diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer is like having someone walking behind you with a revolver. And you don't know if there's a bullet in the revolver, but every now and then they spin it and take a shot.
Wow. Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but The Deer Hunter was the scariest movie I ever saw. I was just, after watching, I'll never watch it again. It was so horrible. But it is kind of like that, because you never know when, bang, it's going to get you.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to the point where I think the guy with the gun is probably a couple miles behind me. I'm out of sights.
Yeah.
But he's still back there.
He's still there, yeah.
He's still there.
I love that. Yeah. That's really good.
It's tough.
Yep.
But yeah, if there is one message to give people, it's that you didn't cause it. Mm-hmm. You can't cure it. Go and do what the doctors say and fight it as hard as you can. And you just might be here 11 and a half, 12, 15, who knows how many years from now.
You don't know. Yep.
And I know my first oncologist kept saying, you only have to live long enough for them to have a new drug hit the market that might give you more hope. Yep. So that was the original plan. Now I'm going, well, I could live another 10 years. I could live, who knows? And I could.
Yeah.
But everyone out there could. You just don't know when they're going to have the key that unlocks your cancer.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
Yeah. Yeah. Your story is very hopeful and very inspiring to so many people living with metastatic disease, because there is room for hope. That's really good. All right, my friend, the exceptional responder. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. And thank you so much. I adore you. And
take care, Leslie. Thank you for all you do. You really appreciate it.
Thanks, Linda.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.